Keith, I just want to give people another minute or two to jump in.
Sure, I'll give it.
Thank you, Zach, for having us meet.
No, absolutely.
I don't know how to change my name, but that's all right.
All right, so I think in the interest of time, we'll get rolling here. I will certainly continue to let people in as they come. First and foremost, thank you all for taking the time today to attend this really important webinar. You know, Executive Order 39. I think certainly was a long time coming. It's going to do a lot of really good things for this industry. But, you know, there are a lot of questions, and so we're so thankful for DCAS for putting this together to give their presentation to answer those questions. For those of you who don't know, I am Zach Miller, the Director of Metro Region Operations for the Trucking Association of New York. Really proud to partner with DCAS on this and a whole host of safety initiatives. Before I pass it over to Keith, I do just want to say, you know, as part of our program at TANY, safety training and education is a huge component of what we do. We are so excited to have finally partnered with Together for Safer Roads to offer the focus on fleet safety training and education program. So after this presentation, for those of you that are curious about, hey, what sort of training would work for me, please reach out and I could talk to you about focus and if that's right for you. I think for many of you it is. But with that, I really do want to pass it over to Keith and to DCAS to get the ball rolling on this presentation and all things Executive Order 39.
Okay, thank you very much, Zach. And we greatly appreciate your partnering with us and TANY partnering with DCAS in the city to begin this kind of educational process. And a bit of a cultural process. We're going to, you know, have a big ambition through both Local Law 108 and Executive Order 39 to increase the level of safety preparedness and safety technology across all the fleets that operate in the city that are funded by the city. So kind of thematically, we've done a lot of work to improve the safety for the city fleet. And we're doing an initiative with school buses and the commercial school buses as we speak. But we also, where fleet operations are funded by the city, but through contracts, we also want to do as much as we can to address safety issues. DCAS is also a partner of Together for Safer Roads. And so we think that's a really good relationship for all of us to reinforce this whole kind of focus on safety. I do want to, on behalf of Mayor Adams and our Commissioner, Luis Molina, thank you all for taking the time to run through this. Some housekeeping, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go through both Local Law 108, the side guards law, and I know a lot of you are familiar with that, but I do want to restate it since it impacts city contractors. And then we're going to go through the newer Executive Order 39 that was signed by Mayor Adams in February of this year. And officially, as of July 1st of this year, the requirements are now going to be placed into new contracts going forward. I might state right up front for Local Law 108 and for Executive Order 39, it never governs existing contracts or renewals of contracts. This is always going to govern new solicitations. So you will always have the opportunity to factor in costs, and there are costs. We're not going to state there aren't costs. There absolutely will be some costs and some investments towards safety. We think these are smart investments. We think these will
Ready?
pay off both
When are you gonna come
financially
down and
and in
work?
safety in the end. Hi, if you're not actively speaking, if you could mute your phones, that would be great, and mute on Teams, that would be great. So you will always have the ability to factor those into bids, and the requirements will be the same for all who are pursuing city contracts. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, and you will all let me know if you can see my screen. Thank you, Zach. And I am going to share my sound. So we do have some videos that we're going to show. I will rely on you, Zach, to let me know if the sound is not coming through. We tested it yesterday, but you know, those tests are
We are
always
viewing the
always have
wrong
to be-
screen. We can see your presenter screen right now. If you click up top at display settings on the screen that has the two windows,
hold on.
click that, and then click swap presenter view and slideshow.
Okay.
Now we can
All
see
right,
the correct screen.
Okay, great. So again, my name is Keith Kerman. I'm the Chief Fleet Officer for the City of New York and a Deputy Commissioner at DCAS, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. DCAS manages 5 major areas for New York City, and fleet is one of them. Also, the real estate program, the civil service system, our human capital program, the energy program, and the procurement program in partnership with the Mayor's Office of Contracts and the Law Department. So you could easily be working with DCAS on the fleet side in relationship to these fleet safety initiatives, but also responding to DCAS procurement in relationship to specific bids that will require this. We are the largest trucking operation that operates in New York City. We have over 11,000 diesel trucks. You know our equipment. It's the sanitation equipment. It's the fire trucks and the ambulances. It's emergency service units from the police department. It's DOT, DEP trucks. And I will say right up front, everything we're going to talk about here, from side guards to surround cameras to training, everything we have implemented or are implementing in scale for the city fleet. Telematics, everything we're going to talk about today, we're doing as the largest trucking operation and largest single fleet in the city. So we're not asking anyone to do anything that we don't believe can be done, because we're already doing it across an incredibly diversity of makes, models, types, ages of fleet. We operate 120 on-road types of vehicles of every type of make, model, age imaginable. So we know that all of this can be done because we've already done it. What we're trying to do is extend the safety program to other publicly funded fleet operations, contracting operations. And why are we trying to do it? It's part of the city's commitment to Vision Zero, and it's to address really serious, tragic events that have been happening. Every one of these is recent. Every one of these is a tragedy that has happened in the streets of New York City. And everything that I'm showing here involves trucks. Some are city trucks, some are part of the city fleet, some are commercial contractor trucks, including the most recent, which is the Bronx Grandma 73. Actually, the elderly woman killed by truck in Brooklyn is the most recent. And all of these are what we're trying to address. And we look into the causes of these events, and we're trying to respond to the causes of the events. And I'm going to tell you right up front, in most of these events, visual impairment for trucks is a major issue, a major cause. And we're going to get into that. And this Executive Order 39 tries to do a lot of things, but if there's any theme, it's focusing on visual impairments for truck drivers. So there's been already a public announcement of Executive Order 39. It's been in the public press. And so I will say I'm going to be sharing with Zach and with all of you this deck, and there are links to all of the announcements and the materials, the documents that I'm referring to. There are links. So when you get this deck, we will also publish this deck on the DCAS Fleet website. And so you'll be able to link quickly and easily to see everything I'm referring to. Okay, so improving city fleet and truck safety, Executive Order 39 enhances safety for the city fleet and city contractors. It builds directly off Local Law 108 of 2021, which requires truck side guards for the city fleet, for contractors, and for commercial waste vendors. So this is really an extension of Local Law 108. I will tell you that some of the elements that are in Executive Order 39 have also been introduced at different times by different members of the City Council for local law. So while there's nothing specific to discuss on that front at the moment, these concepts and safety improvements that are in Executive Order 39 are also items that have been looked at least in the past, for legislation. Side guards has been legislated, that's Local Law 108. And these other elements have been, what we call intros, have been considered, although are not yet local law. This is an executive order. Some of you may already have, on the first one I'm going to talk about, side guards on your trucks. I hope you do. We know that thousands of commercial trucks have side guards already. The Business Integrity Commission has been working to place side guards on all trucks that are regulated by their agency as part of commercial waste operations. Many of you also, I just have a couple of pictures for companies that we work with in the city. I live and travel the city all the time, and we see side guards on lots of trucks, not all, but on lots. So we know we've made a lot of progress. I will tell you that every city fleet vehicle, every truck now has side guards. So we did this first, we've implemented it fully. On the city fleet side, I'm mostly going to talk about the requirements as impact all of you as contractors, but I did want to mention what we're doing in the city fleet since it's the model for these other initiatives. And I want to restate that everything we're asking contractors in the future to do, we've already done or are in the midst of completing. So Executive Order 39 also addresses the city fleet program. It increases and codifies requirements for city fleet safety, includes a mandate that all staff acknowledge the fleet rules, take safe driver training, are enlisted in the state license event notification system, LENS, to monitor license changes, to monitor DWIs, to monitor suspension of licenses. Effective June 2024, the citywide fleet is completely up to date on these due diligence requirements. We went through from the period of the signing of the executive order, which was February, to June, our own review of all these due diligence requirements, updating all our lists, all our training, deauthorizing actually well over 1,000 operators who were not up to date, and basically said, if you are not up to date by the end of May, you are simply not operating a vehicle for us anymore until you become up to date. We are also required to implement truck side guards, telematics, high vision trucks, or surround cameras. So the technology side, we are already doing that. All of our vehicles have telematics. All of them have truck side guards. We'll talk about a little more. We've already implemented 2,000 surround cameras, with more being ordered as we speak. And we've already made a public announcement that we would invest in high vision trucks wherever available in the marketplace. And there are absolutely still limitations in the marketplace on that. The broader safety plan for the city fleet is called the Safe Fleet Transition Plan. It's a published document. And so we're going to send you those links and you can take a look at that. City fleet and contracted school buses are taking these similar steps. So we made an announcement earlier this year, Mayor Adams made an announcement with the school's chancellor that the city contracted school buses would also be taking similar steps as we're going to be talking about in Executive Order 39. Side guards are not as relevant for school buses because of the design of the vehicle, but the telematics and the working on visual obstruction certainly are. And as a note, telematics, which is something we're going to talk about, is already required by executive order for the city fleet and fully implemented, and required by local law for contracted school buses. So the over 10,000 contract school buses, similar to your operations, are already implemented and required by law to have telematics, and that is fully in place today. So the type of requirement that we're going to talk about on telematics for contractors is also, I suspect the school bus program is the second largest trucking program, just slightly behind us out there, when seen in scale. It's over 30 separate companies, but 10,000 buses in total, and already doing the telematics component that we're going to talk about. I mentioned it once, but I want to mention again. Our basic theme here and the theme of these initiatives is whether in-house or contracted, fleet operations funded by the City of New York must implement a substantial program of fleet safety. That is our theme. And so that's what we're here to talk about. Of course, this is all part of the broader Vision Zero Building a Safer City initiative that Mayor Adams has been leading. You can go to the Vision Zero website for the city and learn more about that. I will say just one thing, and you may or may not know this, but one of the major themes of Vision Zero is to refer to crashes and collisions as crashes and collisions and not as accidents. So we try to avoid the term accident in discussing these incidents and events and tragedies, stressing the idea, and it's not just a kind of, have a thing about words, but stressing the idea that these are preventable events. And that is our goal, to do everything we can to prevent it. Okay, so I want to start with a video about some of the work that we've been doing, and some of these things are what we are going to require of you. And hopefully you will hear the sound. If you don't, somebody let me know.
New York City has the largest municipal fleet
Yeah, the
in
sound
the
was good
United
then.
States. And over the past 10 years, Vision Zero has also made it one of the safest. From sanitation trucks and fire engines to street pavers and police cars, the City of New York owns and operates thousands of vehicles and is proud to lead by example when it comes to traffic safety. Before Vision Zero, virtually no trucks in the United States had side guards, leaving road users at risk of sliding under during side impact collisions. But after New York City passed laws requiring side guards, the rest of the country followed suit, and we began paving the way for safety trends across the U.S. New York City inspired a nationwide Safe Fleets Challenge after introducing tech that slows down speeding drivers, and our real-time telematics operation is the largest in the country, monitoring over 28,500 city vehicles 24/7 for everything from speeding to seatbelt use. In 2014, we introduced a system for examining crashes involving city vehicles and discovered that most injuries are caused by rear-end collisions. So, we introduced automatic braking, new training, and new safety requirements that decreased collisions and injuries. Over 86,000 safety systems have been installed on city-owned vehicles. Over 95,000 employees have completed our defensive driving training, and since 2018, preventable city fleet crashes are down 26%. But we're just getting started, because our work isn't done until we get to zero.
Matt, why don't you continue to advance, since we have two more that we'll need to use video. Thank you. Okay, I mentioned it already, and we're not going to focus on school buses, but we did announce, again, please mute your phones if you're
not allowed,
participating.
but I was told.
Please mute your phones. Thank you. We did announce in January a similar effort for all the city school buses, and we'll send you that link and you can take a look at it. Next slide. This whole effort is part of a partnership that the City of New York has with the Volpe Center at the United States Department of Transportation. And it's implemented as part of New York City Mayoral Executive Order 53 of 2020, which calls for DCAS, my agency, to publish safe and clean fleet transition plans to advance safety and sustainability for public and commercial fleets of the future. So we've done a series of reports. We're going to talk about the elements of them here: truck side guards, the safe fleet transition plan, commercial waste, safety for commercial waste vehicles, specifically safety for school buses, a clean fleet transition plan about electrification and reducing emissions. We're not going to focus on that today, but all of these links are available, and we're certainly happy if you take a look and engage them. Next. So first, we're going to talk about side guards, and I know a lot of you are very familiar with this. I'll try and go through quickly, but I wanted to make sure that we touch on side guards before we get to the newer material in Executive Order 31. What is a truck side guard? It's a common sense protection for pedestrians, bicyclists, children, even small cars against being pulled underneath the truck, especially during right and left-hand turns in crowded city areas. Truck side guards have been mandated in many parts of the world for decades, but are still less common in North America. We do a partnership event with London. I was in London in April. Every truck in London has a side guard, and has for decades. It's as standard as an airbag. It's as standard as the tires themselves. It is not an issue of initiative or concern. By the way, they're all high vision trucks too. We're going to get into the differences between conventionally designed trucks and high vision trucks. But I spent an hour at one point staring at the streets of London and trying to find a single conventional truck designed as so many of our trucks are, and I could not find one. They're all high vision. They all have side guards. This is all achievable in the truck marketplace of today in the world. Next. Why truck side guards? As part of Vision Zero, DCAS partnered with the US DOT Volpe Center to study and report on potential implementation of truck side guards in New York City. That's the report. Truck side guards are relatively inexpensive, costing about $1,500 to $2,500 to implement. And most importantly, they save lives. The fatality rate for bicyclists and pedestrians colliding with the side of a truck decreases dramatically, 61% and 20% respectively, when you have a side guard. And that's based on a comprehensive study of side guard requirements from the UK, which has been using them for decades. It's a standard thing. It's not. And that's true in many parts of the world, if not most parts of the world. Side guards are a standard item. Transportation Alternatives once referred to them as airbags for pedestrians. DCAS can supply a list of side guard suppliers and installers that we have certified for city fleet work. So we've partnered with the US DOT Volpe Center to certify side guard supply and side guard install, two different things. And we can absolutely share that. We don't recommend vendors here. We don't endorse vendors, but we absolutely, as a matter of public record, can share with you the list of vendors we've certified. It's public record anyway. Next slide. So Local Law 56 was the first of the side guard laws. It was passed in 2015. It requires truck side guards for the whole city fleet and for all commercial waste trucks. So some of you may very well be representing commercial waste trucks and already have implemented this. The law outlines the detailed specification that qualifies as an acceptable side guard. I'm going to review that spec. It empowers DCAS to inspect guards, to make exceptions or exemptions by vehicle type, vehicle operations, or other technical reasons. There are some types of trucks, for example, sweepers, or that cannot take truck side guards. DCAS worked with Volpe to establish market suppliers of the guards, to train and certify installers. I've mentioned that. In many ways, New York City helped create the industry in the United States around side guard supply. When we started, there was just kind of one Canadian company. There was an airflow company. It was not really in the safety business. It was in the airflow resistance fuel economy business. And that's how we began. Now we have a lot of vendors, including many of the vendors who have been selling these guards for decades in Europe, have now established themselves here in the United States. The initiative has certainly gotten national attention. It's been recognized nationally by the Federal Laboratory Consortium for Technology Transfer, an interesting group. And truck side guards have been proposed in Congress for national law. There's many advocacy efforts nationally and locally around truck side guards. Next. Okay, the truck side guard specification, I'm just going to read it. It's in the law. Term side guard means a device fit to the side of a large vehicle designed to prevent pedestrians and bicyclists from falling into the exposed space between the front axle and the rear axle of such vehicles. Except where otherwise authorized by rule of the department being DCAS, side guards shall allow for a maximum 13.8-inch ground clearance, maximum 13.8-inch top clearance, up to 4 feet in height, and a minimum 440-pound impact strength. Must achieve a smooth and continuous longitudinal forward to backward impact surface flush with the vehicle sidewall. May include rail style guards, provided that such rails be no less than 4 inches tall and no more than 11.8 inches apart. It may incorporate other vehicle features such as toolboxes and ladders. So, ultimately, we're looking for a guard that is flush with the truck. We don't want a guard that's sticking out that could be itself a safety hazard. We want a guard, we're fine with rail guards. We're mostly using rails ourselves, and they can be less expensive as long as there are not substantial gaps in the rails that could be a safety issue. We don't want there to be too much of a gap from the ground up, because, of course, that's what we're trying to solve. We're trying to solve those gaps to make sure that a bicyclist, can't go through the gap and be hit by the tire. I will say on side guards, we've installed them on a lot of different trucks of different makes, models, sizes, with toolboxes, with oil tanks, with step ladders, all kinds of stuff in the center. We are always available to help advise on the designs or do an exemption if it can't be done. Tri-axle trucks is an exemption that the Truck Association brought to us in earlier conversations, and we agree for the vast majority of tri-axle trucks, not all of them I might add, but the vast majority of them, there's no way to put in a side guard, and there's no issue. There are a small percentage of tri-axle trucks that still have a substantial enough gap that exists that a truck side guard, a small truck side guard, could be installed. But that is for sure a minority of those, and we've had good conversations with Zach, and we've exempted those, and that's fine. We're here to make this work. We've exempted a number of city fleet vehicles, and I mentioned sweepers, but we have units in the fire service and other agencies that just because of the design of the truck or the age of the truck and the design, you just can't do it. So we get it. If that's the case, that's the case. Next. And you've mentioned this already. I show one picture that I took. There are lots of pictures. And again, we want to thank you for all the work that you've done on the side guard rule already. I know all of these mandates can be startling at first and seem like hurdles. I've been involved in the diesel particulate filter mandate, going back to the environmental emissions, to the side guard mandate, to supporting some of the other work of BIC. We all get it done, and the city's better for it. The city air is dramatically cleaner since the city's been doing things like DPFs and biofuels, and we want to make it safer. So I do want to thank all of you for all the work that you've done and the work that I'm going to, pose to you that we need to do moving forward. Next. Just some of the pictures of the city fleet program. We are doing what we're asking you to do. Next. Okay, so Local Law 108 extends the truck side guard requirement to city contractors. Passing of this law was led by then Councilman Idanis Rodriguez, who was the transportation chair. He, of course, is now the DOT commissioner under Mayor Adams. It covers contracts valued at $2 million or more. So now getting into what is covered here. It's not every contract. It's $2 million or more where a truck is used on a weekly or more frequent basis to perform requirements material to the contract. This would include subcontractors. So we are not trying to cover every single truck. We're trying to cover the ones that are really assigned to a contract or mostly performing the services of a city contract. Contractors have 1 year and 18 months to outfit the trucks, depending on the size of the impacted fleet. The law governs contracts registered by the controller on or after January 1st, 2023. And the contract language needs to be placed in the contracts that should be happening at this point for city contracts across all the agencies. But agencies have standard language that is to go into the contracts. And it does not recover renewals of existing contracts. So we're not attempting to renegotiate contracts that you've already entered. We're asking for increased safety and as part of the bid assessment for new contracts. You will have time to build these costs into your bids. Each city agency must work to track compliance for the contractor fleets under their oversight. This will be true of Executive Order 39 as well. DCAS works with each agency to compile citywide compliance tracking to address technical issues, exemptions and exceptions, and inspections. But you're still contracting with the main agency. You're not contracting with DCAS unless it is in fact a DCAS specific contract. If you're doing a construction contract for parks or DEP or DDC, they're still the contract manager, not DCAS. We will support them on Local Law 108 and on Executive Order 39, but ultimately they still have to administer this as part of the contract requirements, as they have to administer every part of the contract requirements, right? Your contract manager is responsible for all 100 pages of your contract. It'll include this now, but it isn't that, oh, you report to DCAS on this. You always report to your contract agency. By law, contracts must include financial consequences for non-compliance. Next. So I do want to just repeat, I really read this, but I'm just going to read it quickly. And some of this language that you will see for Local Law 108 is mirrored in Executive Order 39. So a lot of what I'm talking about here, you'll see the exact same language in Executive Order 39. Who's impacted? For purposes of this section, the following terms of the following meeting: city contracted vehicle. The term city contracted vehicle means any large vehicle is utilized within the city on a weekly or more frequent basis to fulfill requirements material to the scope of a contract, registered with the controller, where such contract has an estimated value of $2 million or more. This definition does not include agency on-call emergency contracts, including on-call storm emergency contracts, or the following types of contracts that are governed by rules of the Procurement Policy Board: emergency procurements, intergovernmental contracts, government-to-government contracts, or contracts for the provision of work or services by public utilities. So that's who's governed. Next. The time frame: the local law takes effect immediately, provided, however, that the provisions of the section as amended by the local law shall apply to contracts registered by the controller on or after January 1st, 2023, and shall not apply to renewals, exemptions, or modifications of contracts entered into prior to January 1st, 2023. And so for Local Law 108, it's January 1st of 2023. As we get into Executive Order 39, it's July 1st of 2024. 18 days ago. Next. Time frame: no later than 12 months from the issuance of a notice to proceed pursuant to an individual contract utilizing 10 or fewer trucks, and 18 months for an individual contract utilizing more than 10 trucks. Any city contracted vehicle covered by such contract shall be equipped with side guards. So you have time to install. You have time to implement. Next. Enforcement: all agency contracts involving city contracted vehicles shall contain the requirements of this section and shall be enforced as part of each agency's oversight with respect to each contract. The department DCAS shall provide technical guidance to each contracting agency with respect to their oversight responsibilities pursuant to this section. Contract requirements shall include, but not be limited to, a penalty of up to $4,000 for each city contracted vehicle that is found to be out of compliance with the requirements of the section. So there is a potential penalty. That penalty is tied to the cost of installing side guards. So we don't want to impose that penalty. We want you all to plan for this as you bid into contracts, to comply, and for us to work together. If you're bidding your contracts well and factoring these costs in an effective way, the city would be paying for it through the contract. We understand that, but we want to avoid these kind of penalty issues. Next. So we did adopt side guard rules and I'm not going to go through all of those. There is a very copious exemptions process in the rules. It's like 3 pages. So I want to take all your time because I do want to get to Executive Order 39. So I will share the link with all of you. There are exemptions for where side guards aren't appropriate for vehicles. We talked about that. If there are supply chain issues, if there are other issues that are compelling, documented, and we agree should be exempted, those exemptions for local law 108 do come to DCAS, which will decide on them directly with your contracting agency. And we will work with you if there are reasonable issues that go to operations. In truck design, we will absolutely work with you. Reminding you that we care about safety, we care about the implementation of these initiatives. Next. Okay, so that brings us to the main thing we want to talk about, which is Executive Order 39 of 2024, City Contractor Safety. The executive order will increase fleet safety requirements for city contractors. It governs contracts of $2 million or more in value and will govern only new contracts, not renewals or extensions. Same language as Local Law 108. There are exemptions for emergency, intergovernmental, and utility contracts. Same language as Local Law 108. The executive order will govern contractor vehicles used on a weekly or more frequent basis within the city to fulfill contract requirements. Same language. And here I say the executive order mirrors the language in Local Law 108. Next. Okay, so there are 2 main components that I want to talk about. There are the due diligence components, and then there's the technology components. I will say up front, I've said this on a number of occasions inside city government, that the due diligence, while there are some very minor costs relating to it, is something you should be doing, right? I would be concerned if a contractor in a major fleet operation said that these due diligence things were unreasonable, since this is basic safety, basic fleet management, basic operator management. We just want to codify it. We just want to have confirmation that it's happening. One is that everyone will have to submit a safety plan tied to their fleet and tied to their contract within 1 month of contract registration. We're going to provide you a checklist of the elements of that as we get later in this deck, and that checklist will be in every contract going forward. So you're going to see the checklist, but we're going to ask that a safety plan be established. New York City has a safety plan, the Safe Fleet Transition Plan. It's a matter of public record. We do it in partnership with the U.S. Department of Transportation. It's a lot more extensive. We're not asking that of you. We're going to tell you exactly what we're asking. But this is a culture change. This is a contracting change. We're going to ask for a safety plan for verification that you've thought through earnestly, diligently, these issues of fleet safety. We're going to ask for a list of vehicles and drivers, including subcontracted vehicles that are be part of the contract. We're going to ask that you confirm that you have enrolled drivers in the New York State License Event Notification System, LEMS. This is something that we do for City Fleet, and it tracks and reports on for all operators who have a New York license, major changes in their license, so that you are aware and we are aware if there's a DWI, if someone's had a suspended license. We do not want someone who's just been arrested for DWI operating a truck as part of a playground repair contract the next day. If you have a suspended license, you should not be driving, and that's true for your commercial work, and it's true for your contract work with us. You will need some other license monitoring system for operators with licenses that are not New York State, and we do the same. We have the same issue. We are asking that drivers complete a safe driver training program within 6 months of work on a city contract. We recommend, but do not require, the New York State approved defensive driving courses, that 6-hour course. And we will provide a city contractor custom option of that by January 2025. We're working on that now. So, those cost $16 to $20 per person. We're only asking that the drivers take it once. There's kind of like a 3-year term on that. It is a benefit to operators. They will get insurance benefits, 10%. They can get license points off their license if they have them. You can propose another type of training program. That, while we recommend the New York State approved programs, and I'm sure that those are very familiar to many, if not most of you, we implement them ourselves. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's fine to have another safety program. If you have your own in-house safety program, that's completely fine. We just want to know that there's some minimal basis of safety training that takes place for our operators. You will be required to notify us of crashes that take place while conducting city contracted business. We do not need to be notified of crashes that are unrelated to our work and related to your commercial work. But if you're doing a project for DOT and you're doing a street paving project and you've got a dump truck out there and it smashes into a local neighborhood food cart, well, we need to know about it because we're impacted by that. And that is, a city-related operation, and it could have public and legal implications for not just you, but for us. And so we will establish inside city government a tracking. We have crash tracking for all city fleets. We're going to establish, probably through DCAS, we're still working with the agencies, a tracking of all contracted crashes. We're not asking you to do that tracking. We're just asking you to tell us about any involving you and your company. We will establish a tracking of that to understand what themes might exist, what trends might exist in crashes involving our contracts. And as I mentioned, from the lens, to notify us of license suspensions or arrests involving drivers for city contracts. Our issue and what you're doing in response. Our core issue is not to get involved in the human resource issues within your company. Our issue is to make sure that people with serious license issues or suspensions are not operating city contract for city contract on behalf of the city. So if your license is suspended at sanitation, you don't get to drive the truck tomorrow. If your license is suspended at parks, you don't get to drive the truck. We just want to know before we have some horrible tragedy involving it. Why do we have to wait for some horrible thing to happen and then we're required to do it now? We want just basic due diligence. It is not our intention to engage your human resource issues. We're not telling you to fire someone, demote someone. We just want to know that people with serious license concerns are not operating on our behalf. That's all. It's safety. Otherwise, the rest is your business. But it is our business if someone's got 2 DWIs and is working on a DDC project, at a school, or a school construction project at a school or something like that. That is not what we want. Next slide. I mentioned city safe driver training. We know everything about it. We've surpassed the 100,000 person operator trained mark since January of 2014, when Vision Zero first began in New York City. We've been doing this training in person and online. The options we're going to offer you is an online option. We've done about 33,000 people through the training online, 6-hour training, but the online version gives you total capacity to break it up. You can do 1 hour at a time, a half hour at a time. You can manage it completely. Obviously in person, it's an all day, but the option we're going to be offering you is online. It'll have a 1 hour of safety that's kind of very specific, a deck that's specific to city contracts, to city government operations, and then it'll have the core curriculum that is the state defensive driving curriculum. That's what we do now. It's been very well received, very successful. City employees are not fleet operators. Will often tell you their opinions. We've had 100,000 people do this, and almost everybody's been thankful and reviewed it well. Next. So here are some details about the New York State License Event Notification System. And again, we're going to send you this slide. We've been operating Lens exclusively for decades. We just did a review, so we have over 28,000 civilian operators who are on Lens, and then more through our uniform services. So we're using Lens and Scale. There is a cost to Lens, so that is something you will need to factor in. Lens is not, Lens is free for the public sector, so I thank the state for that. It is not for commercial entities. I'm sorry, I don't control that. But it's a fairly de minimis cost, and I will argue you're most likely already doing it, and you should be. I mean, it's pretty basic due diligence, right? So while there is a de minimis small cost, I think anybody in the fleet business or the contracting business using trucks should be in fleet, should know what's going on with their employees' licenses. I do not think that is an unreasonable burden. I think it is unreasonable not to know what's going on with your licenses, your employees' licenses. So we will share this slide and the link to the DMV program. Next. Okay, so that's the due diligence piece. I'm going to have a checklist I share with you a few slides from now. I will tell you, while you may request exemptions, that is not excluded from the exemption process that it will exist, and it's similar to the exemption process for local law 108. I will say that I think the bar for exemptions from due diligence is going to be pretty high. While there's some de minimis costs, these are not unreasonable expectations for somebody who's doing large involved fleet contracts for the city of New York. Make sure the licenses aren't expired or suspended, and have a basic one-time modest investment in training on safety is not, in my opinion, unreasonable. Now let's go to the technology, which I do not believe is unreasonable, but I think there's more likely instances where there will be reasonable and thoughtful requests for exemption. So there are kind of two themes to the technology requirements, in addition to the truck side guards we've already talked about, which is already law. One is visual impairment for trucks. And so city contractors will be required to implement truck surround cameras or high vision trucks, either one, within 1 year for fleets involving 10 or fewer trucks, or 18 months for fleets involving more than 10 trucks. The same language as in local law 108. And I'm going to talk about the importance of truck surround cameras and what they are in high vision trucks in a moment. I will mention again, in London and other cities, London has a direct vision standard. Every truck does this, commercial, public, everybody. Nobody is allowed to drive into London without a high vision or direct standard. Again, when I was in London, it's remarkable how every truck is designed differently across the board. A conventional truck where the engine and trainee is in front of the driver, I also could not find one. Here, it's the opposite, right? It's more unusual to find a high vision truck here. The other technology is telematics for contracted vehicles while performing city business. We are not asking for information about your private business. We are asking for information about fleet operations during city business. Our focus is safety. Now, could this information also be helpful to monitor city contracted operations and services? Absolutely. It's part of why we use telematics on our side. But let me state, we are not interested in your work that is unrelated to the city of New York, just your contracted work. We do know there are going to be some nuances here. In some contracts, it'll be pretty straightforward. I've got these 20 vans that provide senior citizen services, and that's what they do, and that's all they do. That's going to be pretty straightforward. There are going to be other cases where there are going to be more nuances, and each agency in DCAS will have to work with you on how to focus on the information that is most relevant to us and exclude anything else. We understand that. The information, and let me also say that the telematics must track time, date, location, and vehicle speed only. You may have systems, and we're going to talk about that, go way beyond that for sure. But the requirement is time, date, location, and vehicle speed. So this is a more minimalist version of telematics. There are lots of telematics that plug right into the OBD2 port where you're getting vehicle diagnostics, you're getting brakes, you're getting accelerating, you're getting all kinds of seat belts, you're getting all kinds of other stuff. For this purpose, and again, because Safety is our main issue, and speed is the main, not the only, but the main issue in safety that we're looking at. Those are the requirements. And so there definitely are more minimalist telematic systems, less expensive telematic systems that can do that. I will say right up front, I recommend telematics for all of you, if not already doing it. I suspect most of you are already using them. They have enormous implications for how you run your business effectively and efficiently, how you supply services. You shouldn't need me to sell you on having a tracking system in this day and age. You should already have one. Ultimately, we're here talking about safety. That's what the executive order is about. But we use this, we do this. We've had enormous benefit from telematics, cost benefit. We've reduced about 1,800 city vehicles and saved money just on fleet reduction through telematics. So there's a lot of arguments about how you run your business to have this technology. Our focus is safety, and our requirement is minimalist. Any of you who know telematics know we're not asking for the moon on this in the executive order. We're asking for the bare minimum due diligence here. Agencies can impose liquidated damages for noncompliance. Agency contractor managers would implement the executive order requirements with technical support for DCAS. So again, you're still contracting with your agency, whether it's DEP or DDC or sanitation or parks or DOT. You're not contracting with DCAS. Agencies may request exemptions from aspects of the order for operational costs or other reasons. DCAS and the Mayor's Office of Operations, in this case, will consult on these exemptions with your contracting agency. And we will have more detailed language about the exemptions that will be part of the contracts. We're not ready to share that today. That's in the finalization process. But when you have a contract with Executive Order 39, those details will be there. Next. I will mention actually about exemptions before I go on to talking a little bit more about the technologies and showing a video. The more that you can introduce issues of exemption, technical incompatibility, or other issues with your agency or DCAS before the bidding process or as part of a pre-bid process, that is very, very helpful. The more that we can take into account issues ahead of time, and Zach was very helpful in coordinating that involving the triaxle trucks. We kind of made a broad triaxle truck decision before there was any contract involving triaxle trucks to talk about. We had already kind of addressed it up front. To the extent there are issues like that, we can take care of this before contracting, before bids are submitted. That allows a fair playing field for everybody. Everybody knows what is asked for or what's exempted. That is better. We know that it will never be perfect like that. There are some contracts where you could be in a 5-year contract in construction, and the requirements of each project during the contract are different, and different trucks are going to come into play, and different maybe specialties. We know there's not going to be a perfect ability to avoid post-contract exemption requests, but the more of that we can do up front, the better. All right, so I just want to talk about the technologies. Truck surround cameras, and this is all about visual impairment. Contractors will be required to implement high vision trucks or install truck surround cameras. In most cases, at least in the short term, it's going to be retrofitting with a truck surround camera. Visual obstruction is a critical issue for truck safety. City of London, as I mentioned, mandates direct vision standard for all trucks. We have already implemented nearly 2,000 truck surround cameras through retrofits. They can cost, on average, about $1,000 to $2,500 per truck, depending on the size of the truck, the complexity of the truck, how complex a system you're attempting to procure. There are a lot of vendors who are providing this. We can certainly share names and contact information for vendors. We do not endorse any vendor, but we certainly have lots of vendors who have come to our annual fleet show in May, and the fleet show list of vendors is public record. We often publish it anyway. So we can certainly share that kind of information. We are never endorsing any specific vendor. All we care about is that you get a system that works and you confirm it with us. Surround cameras, again, are readily available in the marketplace for retrofit or new truck purchases. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety and other reports show that these cameras reduce crashes. And we think there's a common sense incredibly compelling argument for it. You can see the Institute for Highway Safety report at the link I've attached, but we're going to show you a video in trying to explain this a little bit more clearly. Next.
Okay, guys, we want to do this show and tell, and this is really cool. Two other key aspects to this plan. The first one being surround cameras outside of the bus. So Keith and I are going to walk up here. So this is Ann, our lovely bus driver. Hi, Ann. Hi. So we want to show you something. Keith, why don't you, step there. John, if John comes out here, so Ann is driving the bus, right? And she's at eye level. This is what Ann sees in front, right?
So we have one of our employees in front of the bus, and right now he's kneeling over, so about the size of a child, and of course our school buses are here to transport children. Ann, without any assistance, cannot see him at this time. So Ann, as a normal heighted driver, is sitting at the wheel. Our employee, who happens to be right in front of this bus, is invisible to her.
But watch what happens, John. Let's show him. Look at the screen.
So with these surround cameras, Ann now gets a perfect view around the bus. And you can see that Gary, our great DCAS employee, now is fully visible to Ann through the camera, but without that camera, she would not know that he's in front of the bus. And of course, that's an enormous concern. Our buses exist only to transport children, and so we need to make sure that our bus drivers can see all around the bus. And the cameras also offer a view around all four corners of the bus, so that if a child or a pedestrian, a family member is approaching any side of the bus, our bus drivers now have a perfect view of that.
Okay, so I mean that's why we care about truck surround cameras. Now I'm not going to share this video because it's recent, it's gruesome, it's out in the public eye, but I mentioned a recent fatality with an elderly woman in Brooklyn. That fatality, the video is in the public sphere. It is an incredible tragedy, and it has, I'm not the investigator of this event, so I'm speaking from as just a fleet professional who has seen the video. But there is every likelihood that it is a perfect example and a tragic example of what we just showed in the video with ABC News in the school bus. The event almost certainly involves a truck that could not see a person. The truck's going 2 or 3 miles at most an hour. It had just been stalled in traffic. It had just begun to move. It had moved no more than 5 or 6 feet before this fatal, tragic event takes place. Visual impairment, almost certainly played a critical role in what took place. The design of the truck was probably, I'm not here to make any, I don't make decisions on such things, but very likely what happened. And so we know that what we did with Gary, our employee at DCAS, as kind of a little simulation for ABC News, is in fact why people are dying in the streets of New York, of our city now. All right. Truck surround cameras are still not the best solution. It's the best interim solution. High vision trucks are the best solution. Design the truck so there isn't a 15 to 20 foot line of sight obstruction in the first place. And that's what London's doing. That's what a lot of countries and manufacturers are doing. So a high vision truck is an alternative to surround cameras. The order defines high vision, sometimes called cab over. We all refer to the cab over as kind of a version of a high vision, though high vision can be a lot better than cab over. But a high vision truck is a truck with a cab over or cab forward design, wherein the driver sits in front of the front axle, as opposed to the conventional cab design, where the engine and front axle in front of the driver. The distance from the forward of the center of the vehicle bumper, at which the driver can first see the top of a 3-foot cone, shall not exceed 8 feet, and the distance beyond the exterior of the passenger side door, at which the driver can first see the top of a 4-foot cone, shall not exceed 6 feet. So Those are the measurements that we use. We partnered with the United States Department of Transportation Volpe Center on those. We think they are reasonable measurements. You don't have to have perfect sight lines. We just want a lot better sight lines. And I'll just give you an example. We have an existing diesel contract for 14-foot box truck. And the line of sight as measured through Volpe has a calculator where you can use, it's a public online calculator that you can just Google and find the line of sight for any type of truck. We did that, and it was 11 feet for our conventionally designed diesel school safety NYPD box truck, an existing box truck that we've had for quite a while. And 11 feet is not, the worst of sight lines. We've certainly seen 15, 20, even more. We have a new electric box truck that we just put on contract with a 3-foot line of sight, right? And you can see the differences between those trucks. Of course, it's electric versus diesel. It's sighting as well, but you have a different front line of sight. I will mention that electric trucks, as we begin this transition, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the advanced clean truck rule of New York State following California. We, like you, are very interested in this as it's rolling out right now and looking at a lot of issues relating to it. But as we move forward over the years and decades to come to electrify trucks, the fact of the matter is, as you are changing the propulsion system for the truck, as you're going to batteries that can be placed on the undercarriage of the truck or in other places in the truck, the ability to design a high vision truck and take on the safety issue as well is very, very ready and available. So hopefully the trucks of the future will be electric and high vision, solving two important issues on sustainability and safety at the same time. Next. We have been advocating for direct vision more broadly. We being DCAS in the city of New York and Together for Safer Roads, we'll share that with you. But we believe direct vision following the London standard is achievable in the fleet industry. We know it is, right? It's an international fleet industry. The big truck manufacturers all sell in Europe and they all sell here. When they sell a vehicle in Europe, it's high vision, and when they sell them here, it's that conventional truck you're looking at here in the picture. Next. Volpe did a simulation study, kind of, an analytical simulation study following what we showed you as a video. And long and short, most people in conventional truck interactions when crossing a crosswalk get killed with conventional trucks, and nobody did with a high vision truck. So it's pretty dramatic. And like I said, city of New York had an example of this, a tragic example of this just a couple of weeks ago with a contract commercially regulated truck, maybe one of your trucks. Next. We're going to show now a version of the simulation. First, we'll do the top. Can you see the child anymore? That's a conventionally designed truck. The child has disappeared. If that driver began to move, unless they had remembered the child had crossed, they will run the child right over. Now the bottom. That is a high vision design truck. The child never leaves the view of the driver. That is the difference. And again, it's not a theoretical difference. I debated whether to show you the public video of the tragedy 2 weeks ago. I'm not doing so. I don't think it's fair to the family. We have not had a chance to talk to the family about using that video for educational and training purposes. But if I did show it to you, I will tell you it's this. It's exactly this, causing a horrible, horrible fatality and a gruesome, gruesome event. But it's this issue. That's what happened. Next. Okay, getting to our final topic on the technology, telematics. This is just a screenshot of the City of New York's use of telematics I often joke that you can't walk 2 blocks in New York City and not see a fleet vehicle, a police car, ambulance, garbage truck. I can now prove that that is most certainly the case. We are tracking vehicles every street, every district of the city, every day. Next. So the executive order requires telematics for fleet assigned to city contracts as defined in the order. Telematics is defined as follows: automatic vehicle location systems that track vehicle location and speed and alert the driver and another designated person, you, your company, to such location and speed in real time. So it's real-time monitoring of what's going on at the location and speed. Telematics obviously can do so much more than that, but this is what we are minimally requiring. Our focus is on location and speed information and the use of systems to monitor and improve safety. However, we acknowledge that, you know, this information could also be helpful in managing and operating the contract itself, certainly the location information. Each agency will outline the requirements for install confirmation and sharing of this safety information. So sharing the information is required in the order. How that will be done is going to have to be done agency by agency, contract by contract. There are just too many types of operations out there to set as a common standard for it, at least at this point. I think as we go down this journey together, as we better understand how this is working, what technologies are in play, that we'll be able to think about whether there's some kind of common system where information gets dropped into, whether we can create some kind of portal for information, some kind of integrations. You know, we've thought a lot about that. We think that would be interesting. We do want to make this as easy as possible for you. Up front, though, we're going to have to do this agency by agency because the operations are just so different. There's so many different fleet operations in the nature of those operations, how they transact. The easiest are the ones where trucks really are just full-time assigned to the city. And we have lots of contracts like that, but we have lots of contracts, but that's absolutely not the case. We know that. So we're going to have to work it out case by case. You know, telematics, like I mentioned, can monitor location, speed, seatbelts, hard braking, hard accelerating, hard turning, crashes themselves. We do all of that with our telematics, which plugs into the OBD2 port, the computer port of the car. We have a whole safety index for every single vehicle that we monitor. We have a public initiative to eliminate all high-risk driving and moderate-risk driving. So based on that safety index, we are not requiring that level of sophistication here. So we're opening up this to a whole lot of systems. You may already have a more advanced system than we do, and we know they're out there. And if you do, great. We just have to talk about how to get verification of it and some of the data the agencies need. If you don't, there are definitely a very broad set of fairly inexpensive to fairly expensive systems that can provide this information that we're requiring. And you know, we will certainly be helpful. We again do not endorse any vendors, any technology suppliers, but we can tell you what we do because that's a matter of public record, and we can be helpful to you in distributing lists that we get through events like our public fleet show, since that's a public list. Anyone comes to our fleet show, which is free to the general public, free to vendors, but you know, we've often published the list of vendors and their safety vendors. We can share them. We are not endorsing them, however. Next. Oh, I did go back one moment. I forgot to mention. These can be, and one of the reasons we're pitching this, incredibly impactful. We have reduced in the last year 76% of excessive speeding through telematics and through follow-up and alerts and through hard work. So, you know, these are very, very dramatic results, and this is what we're after. And you know, we live in the real world. City employees can speed and can engage in dangerous driving behavior. We have 28,000 authorized drivers today, and on the civilian side, and probably another 50,000 on the emergency side, on the uniform side. So we know, you know, 75,000 people don't do all the right thing every day. So we can track it and we can make a lot of progress, and that's what we're asking you in good faith to work to do, to keep everybody safe and to operate within the law. And ultimately, speed is a matter of law. Next. So finally, I just want to talk about pulling all this together. So every contractor will be asked to do a vehicle safety plan for these new contracts as they go into registration. And we understand that'll be, many months from now, right? It takes a long time to get contracts. While July 1st is when this initiates, to get a contract from out there, bid, to go through all the different processes, agreements, registrations, it's going to be later this year before you probably see, these contracts starting to get registered and these requirements coming into play. So you have half a year to start planning for this, if not more. But basically the contractor vehicle safety plan is all the elements that we talked about. In your list of contracted vehicles and drivers, confirmation of lens, driver training plans, telematics, surround cameras, other technology and safety initiatives. That's not required, but certainly if you're doing other things in your safety program, would love to hear about that and celebrate that and talk about that. Your collision tracking and monitoring process, again, just for city-related operations. Your correction plan for employees who engage in unsafe or dangerous driving, if you're planning to keep them on our contracts. Again, we're not interested in your HR function. We're interested in what's happening in city contracts, in city services. And so many of you are providing day-to-day city services. So if I have a city fleet vehicle that's providing recreational services for parks or senior citizen services for aging, or I have a contracted vehicle doing the exact same services, and that is happening every day, the safety should be the same. You should not have one standard of safety if the city employee is operating the vehicle and a different set of safety if a contractor is operating the vehicle for the same service. And that is what we're trying to achieve here. And we do want to know that, your company safety plans can't kind of just say, well, we do federal, state, and local law. They have to be compliant to this executive order. So local law is part of this executive order, but this executive order goes beyond existing local law. I wouldn't be shocked if a couple of years from now, elements of this executive order are also local law. It tends to happen like that. But right now, it's executive order. It goes beyond. And it'll be part of your contract requirements. So ultimately, the executive order is going to be part of each of your new contracts. And next slide. So this is the contractor safety plan. It may not be the exact final version that goes into your contracts, but it's going to be pretty close. So we wanted to show it to you. You will have this as a one-page checklist. There's 2 slides, but it's all literally half of one-page checklist. And this is what we'll be asking of you. This is the checklist for your contractor safety plan. And it's really just submit this. We can put in like company contract name information. We can certainly, or you can edit it. We'll probably have a version that'll have a place for you to indicate your company name and indicate the contract number and the agency in the versions that we have to give out. But fundamentally, it's just check the boxes. Are you doing all these things? And then provide the backup materials. We're looking at the idea of a portal to submit these centrally to make it a little easier on the paperwork side. That'll take us a little while to do. No earlier than the end of the year, but we do think we'll have a portal for vendors to use in time. Next. And this is on the technology side. Again, the same checklist outlining the requirements, and you would just provide the backup. So if you have a more elaborate safety plan and more text and more discussion, awesome. But if you want to just use our checklist safety plan and then just provide the backup, that's fine too. And we'll be providing this in every contract as a sample safety plan checklist to use. It'll also serve as a checklist for our contract managers at agencies who will, check off these elements in the same manner. Next. So let me tell you, we're happy to take some questions right after this. Let me just go through the next steps. And again, thank you for working through all of this with us. Local Law 108 and Executive Order 39 requirements were placed in all new contracts going forward. So both are fully in effect at this point. DCAS will work on a custom safety training option online for contractors and a portal for submitting safety plan documents. I think by January 25th, we'll have the training done. The portal I'm a little less certain, but we'll see. We're going to definitely work on that. But I think we'll have the training before the end of the year available as an option for you. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to, as long as you have training, but we wanted to provide it as an option for you. Contractors and potential contractors should begin planning for implementing these safety plans as outlined here. We will share this deck. We're going to publish this deck. So you have all these elements available and can be thinking them through. We can supply more information about truck side guards, truck surround cameras, training options, and telematics on request. We will always qualify that we are not endorsing any vendor or any contract, any supplier. However, I can always tell you, because it's a matter of public record anyway, who we're using. And if we have public record information about other options, mostly through our fleet show and related events, I can share them. Contractors and bidders should bring questions or requests relating to implementation or exemptions to contracting agencies, including during pre-bid meetings where these issues could be addressed prior to bids being submitted or earlier, or bring them to us now or relay them to Zach. We'll do our best. I'm sure there are going to be lots of issues. We'll do our best to work through issues ahead of the process as much as we can. And just the reminder, while DCAS will be assisting all aspects of implementation, contracting agencies are still responsible for implementing these requirements as part of general contract management. Your contract is with your contracting agency, always still not with DCAS. Although this particular component, DCAS is going to be your partner and your agency's partner in making this successful. So with that, and just go to the last slides, my contact information. I want to thank you again. I'm happy to take questions, or if you want to submit questions in the chat, or just email me with questions. We know this is a big change. We know this is a major ambition. You know, if you've been following these horrific events that we showed that one slide about earlier in the year, or earlier in the presentation, and have happened throughout the year, I think you would understand why we feel we really need to do as much as we can to avoid these for all involved. There was a horrific event that took place not so long ago. In some of the public press, there's a whole set of articles about how the driver was seen just crying uncontrollably and sobbing uncontrollably after the event. It was a fatal event. We do not want that for anyone. We don't want the fatality and the tragedy for the victim and their families. We don't want it, and it's a tragedy for the drivers as well, and for your companies, and for our agencies, and for the cities. And our job is to work with you to prevent these from happening, so no one has to go through that on any side. And so we appreciate all of your help and partnership. This is just the beginning. We're going to do more trainings. We understand there'll be lots of questions. And we're going to work with all of you to make this successful. Thank you.
Thank you. So I saw a couple of questions in the chat that have been answered. Does anybody have any other questions at this point? Okay, in that case, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, DCAS, for the work that you do and for putting this presentation together. You know, as Keith said, for many, it will be a change, but there is a process in place and plenty of resources available as you go ahead and plan out, you know, your next city contracting. And thank you all again so much for joining. Just quickly, my email, Zach, Z-A-C-H, @nytrucks.org. Feel free to contact me anytime about anything related to this or anything other trucking related in New York City.
Thank you very much, Zach, and thank you all for participating.
Thank you. Very well done.
Have a good day.
2